I choked on my own blood while my twin sister laughed, stealing my billionaire husband. Then I opened my eyes. We had gone back in time, when she desperately demanded we swap fiancés, thinking she was stealing my future empire. I smiled and agreed. She had no idea. The cold, smooth marble floor of the St. Regis penthouse was the last thing I felt in my past life, and that agonizing burn. The poisoned champagne tearing through my throat. Above me, my twin Katrina stood in a custom Oscar de la Renta gown that was supposed to be mine. She smiled, her eyes devoid of any familial warmth, casually holding the empty crystal flute. My husband, Harrison Gallagher, stood beside her, the tech billionaire I had built, who didn't even glance at me as my lungs spasmed. My vision blurred, then went dark. You really tried, Karis, Katrina whispered, crouching to stroke my hair. But don't you think I'm better suited for high society? Rest well, then. Nothing I expected, I thought. Death would be emptiness. Instead, I gasped, my lungs suddenly filled with the rich scent of cherry tobacco from my grandfather's study. My eyes snapped open. I was no longer dying on a Manhattan penthouse. I sat bolt upright in a plush leather wingback chair. Afternoon sunlight streamed in, through the floor-to-ceiling windows. It spilled over the vast, manicured lawns of Montgomery Estate in Connecticut. This rude, impatient gentleman, my grandfather Richard Montgomery's voice startled me. I don't have all day, girls. The Riveras and Gallaghers are waiting for our answer. Tonight, who will choose the Rivera heir, and who will take the Gallagher boy? My heart pounded like a trapped bird. I looked down at my hands. They were soft, smooth, unblemished, completely free of the calluses from years of typing code until my fingers bled. To make ends meet, I worked double shifts as a waitress at a diner in Queens. I looked up to find Katrina sitting across from me. She was pale, her chest heaved, her eyes wide with a frantic, desperate energy I'd never seen before. We were back, right now, summer 2016, exactly 10 years before my murder, the day our fates were decided. Back then, the choice was simple. Arthur Rivera was the sole heir to Rivera Global Logistics, a century-old shipping and freight empire. He was old money, filthy rich, respected from Wall Street to London. Harrison Gallagher, on the other hand, was the disgraced, estranged bastard son of a Texas oil tycoon. He had wealth, but for now, he lived in a roach-infested studio in Brooklyn, Indiana. That life, Katrina practically threw herself at Arthur's portfolio, desperate to become the billionaire's wife. Estate, me, the quiet, beautiful twin, accepted Harrison without complaint, fulfilling our family's duty. But Katrina didn't know that Arthur's company was actually rotting from within, drowning in hidden debt. She engaged in corporate espionage. She also had no idea she was utterly incapable of managing a household, let alone a corporate crisis. She had embezzled the last of Arthur's cash for secret gambling at underground tables in Atlantic City. Her betrayal led to Arthur's eventual ruin, his suicide after the board ousted him. Katrina ended up penniless, disgraced, and bitter. Meanwhile, I moved into Harrison's shabby apartment. I paid the rent, he paid his rent, bought groceries. And when he drunkenly mumbled an idea about a decentralized data streaming protocol, I was the one who stayed up for 72 hours straight coding the Python infrastructure. I was the one who pitched it, while he slept off his hangover. I handed the money to Sequoia Capital. I built the Omner empire with my own hands. Harrison was just the handsome, charming, charismatic face on the Forbes cover. I was his brain, his engine, the sole reason he was worth billions. Katrina watched me rise from the ashes of her own destruction with venomous jealousy. Eventually, she killed me and took everything from me. I want Harrison. Katrina's sudden shriek snapped me out of the memory. She lunged forward, her slender hands slamming down on the mahogany table as she snatched up Harrison Gallagher's thin, hopeless file. Grandfather Richard raised his bushy white eyebrows, clearly startled. Harrison, the bastard. Katrina, are you out of your mind? What do you think? He has no trust fund, nothing in his name. Arthur Rivera is practically American royalty. I don't care about old money. Grandfather, Katrina declared loudly, clutching Harrison's file to her chest like a shield. She looked at me, her eyes gleaming with triumphant malice. I love him, I've met him in secret, and I know he's brilliant. He'll change the world. Karis is actually better suited for a quiet, traditional life with Arthur, right? Karis, she thinks, she's a genius. She believes Harrison's billionaire status in his past life was inevitable. A pure miracle. Destiny seemed destined to happen, no matter who stood by his side. She thought she stole my golden goose, skipped the hard work, and just went straight to the Forbes list. I looked at my twin sister. I saw greed, ruthless calculation, and utter, pathetic delusion. The rage that had boiled in me before my death cooled into something far more dangerous, a cold, steely clarity. If that's what Katrina truly wants, grandfather, I said, my voice calm and steady. I reached out. I gently placed my hand on Arthur Rivera's thick, leather-bound file. I would be honored to accept Arthur's proposal. Katrina let out a long, relieved sigh, her shoulders slumping. She gave me a pitying look, almost mocking. Thank you, Sherry's. I promise you've made the right choice. Oh, Katrina, I thought to myself. I tapped Arthur's file, a faint smile playing on my lips. You have no idea. The wedding took me a long time. A month later, Katrina chose the disgraced son, and grandfather refused to throw her a grand wedding. She and Harrison had a brief, dull ceremony at City Hall. I stood in the back and watched. Katrina walked into the room in a white dress that was clearly off the rack, beaming at Harrison. There was no love in her eyes when she looked at him, only the ravenous hunger of a woman staring at a winning lottery ticket. Harrison, she looked puzzled, probably wondering why a wealthy Montgomery Ellis would give up a life of luxury to live with him. Yet, my wedding with Arthur was the season's grandest social event, held at the Pierre Hotel in Manhattan, a masterpiece of high society drama. At the reception, Arthur and I barely spoke. He was strikingly handsome, tall with a chiseled jawline, exuding a cold and calculating demeanor. He had gray eyes, but they looked utterly exhausted. His movements were stiff and rigid, clearly treating me as just another ordinary office worker. He either saw it as an obligation or, worse, another shallow socialite out to drain what little savings he had left. He didn't know I was already aware. His secret. The day after we returned from our perfunctory, tension-filled honeymoon in Aspen, I walked into Arthur's private home office. He was hunched over his desk, rubbing his temples, a half-empty glass of scotch in front of him, surrounded by stacks of financial reports. He looked up, his jaw tight. Karis, if you're looking for the black AMX, it's on the dresser. Snorts, keep it under 50,000 this month. We're having cash flow issues. I didn't head to the dresser. Instead, I walked over to his desk, took the scotch from his hand, and set it down. I placed a flash drive in front of him. I don't want your credit card, Arthur, I said, pulling up a chair to sit across from him. I want your CFO, David Carmichael, fired by 9 a.m. tomorrow. Arthur froze, his eyes narrowing, suddenly hyperalert. What did you say? Carmichael has been siphoning operational funds from Rivera Global into offshore shell companies in the Cayman Islands for the past 18 months, I stated calmly, relying entirely on those painful facts that we had blindly ignored in our past lives. Katrina was about to force your container leasing agreements with European ports into massive defaults, causing your stocks to plummet just in time for your uncle's hostile takeover of the conglomerate. The evidence is on that hard drive, account numbers, wire transfer records, and Carmichael's private emails. Arthur stared at me, the silence in the room suffocating, like a wire about to snap. Slowly, he reached out and picked up the flash drive. How is this possible? How could you possibly know? I've had forensic accountants reviewing our books for 3 months, and they found nothing, because your accountants were looking for mathematical errors. I replied calmly, I was observing people. You married Montgomery Arthur. Did you really think I'd sit back and watch my new empire go up in flames? We're partners now, and I'm determined to win. For the first time since we met, a flicker of genuine respect appeared in Arthur's cold gray eyes. A slow, dangerous smile crept across his face. Well, Mrs. Rivera, it seems I've severely underestimated you. Meanwhile, on the other side of the bridge, in Bushwick, Katrina's beautiful fantasy was colliding violently with reality. She had moved into Harrison's cramped studio apartment. In her mind, this was just a brief, quirky transitional phase. A fun story she'd later tell journalists in a CNN interview years down the line when discussing their humble beginnings. But a week passed, then a month. Harrison hadn't invented anything. He slept until noon every day, played Call of Duty in his underwear, and ordered cheap takeout with the meager allowance his grandfather still sent. Katrina, whenever Katrina tried to gently ask him about the future, disaster would strike. "Harry, darling," Katrina murmured softly one night, sitting on a rickety Japanese-style mattress, pinching her nose against the stale smell of old pizza crust in the air. "When are you going to start developing that streaming software, Omnirarium?" Harrison paused his game, turning back with an expressionless face. What's Omnirarium? What are you talking about?" Katrina's smile froze. "That brilliant tech idea of yours, the decentralized protocol." Harrison laughed, tossing a crushed beer can into the overflowing trash bin. "Babe, I have no idea what a decentralized protocol is. I failed algebra in high school. Didn't I just say I wanted to make an app for gamers, something that sounds cool in bars? I'm an idea guy, not a nerd. Pass me some Doritos, will you?" In that moment, Katrina felt the blood drain from her face. She rushed into the small, grimy bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out her phone. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened Instagram. She thought she would see me. She felt a pang of frustration. She had expected to see Arthur Rivera splashed across tabloid headlines for bankruptcy. Instead, her social media feed displayed a breaking news story from the Wall Street Journal dominating the headlines. "Arthur Rivera, CEO of Rivera Global, makes a comeback. Karis Montgomery's wife ousts corrupt board of directors, secures $500 million in new backing from Goldman Sachs." The headline was accompanied by a high-definition photo of me and Arthur stepping out of a conference room in Manhattan. I was wearing a tailored Saint Laurent suit, while Arthur, he looked down at me, his eyes not cold and forced as a husband, but filled with a blazing, undeniable admiration. Standing before the dirty mirror in a Brooklyn bathroom, Katrina finally began to grasp the catastrophic truth. Fate wasn't. The script could have been copied word for word. The building was already constructed, and she had just abandoned the architect. Rain lashed violently against the tempered glass of the Rivera Global Tower, headquartered in Lower Manhattan. It obscured the glittering skyline into a blur of gray and gold. Karis Montgomery, now Karis Rivera, stood tall, her reflection superimposed against the towering skyscraper. She wore a tailored charcoal gray Dior suit, her posture commanding and her presence formidable. Snorts. The Wall Street Journal article had been merely the opening act. Since her arranged marriage to Arthur Rivera 8 months ago, Karis hadn't just integrated into his business empire, she had fundamentally reshaped its DNA. Arthur walked into the conference room, tossing a leather folder onto the mahogany table. He was exhausted, but the feeling that had plagued him during their honeymoon was completely gone, replaced by a sharp, predatory energy. He poured 2 glasses of Macallan and handed one to Karis. "J.P. Morgan just approved the restructuring plan," Arthur announced, his voice tinged with triumphant resonance. "The offshore accounts Carmichael embezzled have been seized and liquidated, and the European port leases have been reclaimed. Our finances are secure for the next decade. Karis, we haven't just avoided bankruptcy. We've hit record-high profits for the 3rd consecutive quarter." Karis took the glass. The crystal felt cool against her skin. "Profit is a byproduct of discipline, Arthur." Complacency had been festering within the board. "Now that the corruption has been cleared, we can focus on the real goal, automating the logistics infrastructure. Maersk and Hapag-Lloyd still rely on outdated predictive models. We will monopolize the decentralized freight tracking market." Arthur, he looked at her, his cold gray eyes softening with a hint of awe. In their previous life, he had been a man mired in betrayal, his wife treating him as nothing more than an endless ATM. Now, he stood beside a visionary. "Do you understand?" he whispered, taking a step closer. "If you hadn't walked into my office with that USB drive that morning, I would have lost everything. I thought I was marrying a socialite, but instead, I married a general." "We're partners, Arthur," Cherith replied. She smoothly clinked her glass against his. "Partners protect their investments." Across the East River, a distinct metallic scent of despair hung in the air, a mix of rust, cheap beer, and piled-up trash. Katrina Montgomery sat on the edge of a sunken mattress in a rundown motel room in Queens. 3 months ago, the eviction crew had finally changed the locks, and the Brooklyn studio was gone for good. She had sacrificed her billionaire destiny for him. And Harrison Gallagher was now snoring loudly on the floor, surrounded by discarded lottery tickets and empty takeout containers. Katrina's once perfectly manicured hands now clutched a cracked, barely functional phone. She stared at the shattered screen of her iPhone, endlessly scrolling through Bloomberg headlines. Each one seemed to mock her existence. Karis Rivera named one of Forbes' most influential women in business. Rivera Global acquires massive automated fleet. Arthur and Karis Rivera shine at the Met Gala. Hurricane Katrina sparks outrage. Her throat tightened. That should have been her. She had chosen the genius. She had chosen the one who was supposed to invent Omnir and become the god of tech. Harry, Katrina stumbled, kicking his shin. Harry, wake up. You need to write code. You need to build the platform. Harrison groaned. He swatted her foot away. Shut up, Katrina. I'm hungover. I told you I don't code. I'm an entrepreneur. I need venture capital first. Then I can hire tech people to handle the computer stuff. Have you ever gotten venture capital? Katrina screamed, her voice trembling with hysteria. On the other hand, I mean, you're supposed to be smart. You were supposed to be a billionaire. Harrison sat up, an ugly sneer twisting his handsome face. And you were supposed to be the wealthy heiress. But your grandfather cut you off because you kept acting like a lunatic. I'm going to the bar. Don't wait up. With that, he snatched a crumpled $20 bill from her purse and slammed the door behind him. The dim room fell into dead silence. Katrina curled up, knees to her chest, rocking back and forth. The delusion that had sustained her through the time jump was crumbling, leaving only the terrifying reality, the brutal truth. Fate wasn't a magical aura surrounding Harrison Gallagher. The billionaire she had dreamed of in her past life was, after all, the maker, now sitting on the throne in Manhattan, driven by a dizzying, malicious panic. Katrina realized she had to steal the idea back. In her previous life, she had overheard Karis and Harrison talking about Omnir. She remembered buzzwords like decentralized P2P networks and algorithmic data. The next morning, Katrina put on her last clean designer outfit, a crumpled Chanel blazer, and walked straight into the Apex office. Starting up in the city center, she managed to secure a 10-minute pitch by aggressively mentioning the glorious history of the Montgomery family. Preston, a junior partner at Apex, sat across from her with a politely skeptical expression. Miss Montgomery, what you're proposing is a revolutionary streaming architecture. Where is your technical co-founder? Do you have a prototype, or a GitHub repository we can review? Katrina smiled, though her facial muscles twitched slightly. I'm the visionary, Preston. The code is being finalized, but the concept is a decentralized protocol. It connects computers to make video playback faster without slowing down due to central servers. Preston blinked. That's just a definition of peer-to-peer networking, which has existed for decades. What's your proprietary technology? What's the compression algorithm? Are you using blockchain ledgers for bandwidth verification or a local mesh network? Katrina stared at him, her mind blank with terror. It leverages the Omni protocol. It's highly advanced. We just need $5 million to build the interface. Preston closed his notebook. Miss Montgomery, no offense, but you clearly have no idea what you're talking about. You don't even grasp the basic concepts of software architecture. Please see yourself out. Humiliated and furious, Katrina stumbled out of the hotel. She was penniless, and the hotel was pressing for rent. Harrison threatened to leave her. With her morals completely abandoned, Katrina walked into a Chase Bank branch on Fifth Avenue, using the Montgomery Bank phone. She pulled out the family account number she had memorized years ago and presented a forged authorization letter, flawlessly imitating her grandfather Richard's messy signature. She authorized a transfer of $500,000 to a private offshore account. It was a desperate, foolish gamble, but in her mind, she was simply claiming her inheritance early. She would hire developers, build Omnirim, and destroy Karis. She just needed a little time. 3 years passed, solidifying the Rivera Empire into an untouchable monolith. The grand banquet hall of the Museum of Modern Art in New York was bathed in sapphire light and silver shimmer. Hundreds of the world's most influential figures, tech giants, politicians, and Wall Street tycoons, gathered, sipping vintage Dom Perignon. Tonight was the official launch of Aura, Rivera Global's self-developed AI logistics network. The system was so advanced it could predict global supply chain disruptions weeks in advance. Arthur Rivera stood by the podium, overlooking the crowd. He seemed transformed, exuding a calm and confident aura, but as the lights dimmed, he didn't step up to the microphone. Instead, he turned and extended his hand to his wife. Karis, wearing a stunning custom midnight blue gown, walked onto the stage. The room fell silent, filled with awe. She was no longer just Montgomery Karis, she was the architect of a new era in global trade. 3 years ago, Rivera Global was like a sinking ship, dragged down by outdated operations and internal corruption. Charuza's voice clear and resonant. In the silent banquet hall, we spoke with authority. Tonight, we are not just launching a software platform, we are launching the central nervous system of global commerce. Suddenly, a sharp, loud crash shattered the elegant atmosphere. At the back of the ballroom, a tray of champagne glasses shattered on the marble floor. The crowd parted in panic as a disheveled, frantic figure pushed through the elite guests. It was Katrina. She was unrecognizable. Her Chanel blazer was stained and worn, her hair a tangled mess, her eyes wide and bloodshot. She was utterly unhinged. Behind her, 2 flustered security guards tried to grab her arms, but she broke free. With a desperate, animalistic cry, she shouted, "Liar!" Katrina screamed, her voice echoing shrilly off the high ceilings. "You stole it from me, you stole my life." Karis, a shocked murmur rippled through the room. Arthur immediately stepped forward. Karis stood before him, her expression turning as cold as granite. "Security, remove this woman immediately." "No," Katrina screamed, a trembling finger pointed accusingly at Karis. "She cheated. After we returned, she stole my billionaire, Harrison, who was supposed to build the empire. You tricked me into taking him away so you could have Arthur and all this money." Karis gently placed her hand on Arthur's arm, pulling him aside. She looked down at her twin sister from the raised platform. There was no anger in Karis's eyes, only a chilling pity. "Katrina," Karis said, her voice perfectly amplified by the microphone, cutting through the whispers of the crowd. "Harrison Gallagher was never the genius. He never created Omnirarium. I did. In our previous life, while he slept, I wrote every line of code. I pitched it to the venture capitalists. I built this empire with my own hands. You didn't steal my destiny by choosing him, you simply chose a parasite, thinking he was the host." Katrina froze, the color draining from her face. The manic energy that had driven her into the room vanished, replaced by a suffocating, crushing realization. "No, no, that's impossible. He was on the cover of Forbes, because the world loves a charismatic frontman." Karis replied mercilessly, "But the intellect was always mine. You thought you could take a shortcut to the top by poaching the man you thought was destined for greatness. But destiny isn't something you take, Katrina, it's something you build, and you have built nothing in your miserable life." Before Katrina could formulate a response, the heavy oak doors of the banquet hall swung open again. For uniformed NYPD officers entered, flanking a stern-looking detective. "Katrina Montgomery," the detective announced, his voice cutting through the dead silence of the room. "You are under arrest for suspicion of grand larceny, wire fraud, and forgery of the signature of Richard Montgomery. You have the right to remain silent." Katrina let out a piercing wail as the officers swiftly moved in, securing her hands behind her back with heavy steel handcuffs. She looked around frantically, begging for someone, anyone, to help her. She looked at Grandpa Richard standing near the front row, who turned away in disgust. She looked at Arthur, who stared at her as if she were an insect. Finally, she looked at Karis. "Karis, please," Katrina sobbed. As the police began to drag her away, she completely lost the strength to resist. "I am your sister. We share the same blood. Please give my life back to me." "The life you have now is exactly what you deserve," Cher said softly, then stepped back. The microphone, the heavy door closed, cutting off Katrina's screams. The ballroom fell silent. Karala walked slowly and steadily back to the podium, straightening her notes as if she had just brushed away a minor pest. "As I was saying," Karis continued, a faint, triumphant smile appearing at the corner of her mouth. "Aura represents the future, a future where efficiency replaces chaos, and true value is always recognized." Later that night, long after the journalists had left and the ballroom was empty, Karis and Arthur stood on the balcony of their penthouse, gazing at the sparkling night sky over Manhattan. The city lights mirrored the stars, like a vast kingdom designed by their own hands. Arthur opened his arms to embrace Karis from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "You were absolutely brilliant tonight," he whispered, though, to be honest, I almost felt a bit sorry for her. Karis leaned against his chest. Sipping champagne, she thought of the poisoned chalice from her past life, long left behind. She remembered the dark void and the second chance she had clung to so tightly. "Don't waste your pity," Karis murmured, her gaze fixed on the city below. "Some are destined to rule empires, others are destined only to watch them being built." Story 2. When my father took me to the orphanage to adopt a playmate, I awakened to the plot. I am the female lead in a tragic story. After my family adopted the male lead, I gave him my heart and soul, offering all kinds of help. In the end, he looked down on me, believing I was using money to humiliate him. "When I grow up, he will draw my blood and take my kidney. In the end, I will die an unnatural death, and he will inherit my family's 100 billion fortune," mourning me while seeking a replacement who resembles me, calling me his white moonlight. "With 100 billion fortune, do you even know how to spend it? What are you dreaming about?" "Mr. Green, the list you requested is ready. It's all here. Please take a look." A middle-aged man was holding a list and placing it in front of my father. Behind him stood several boys. They were dressed very plainly, standing behind him, their faces filled with nervous expressions. My dad took the list and turned to look at me. "Bella, take a look at these boys. Which one would you like to bring home?" I looked at the row of boys, my gaze falling on the list in my dad's hand. For a moment, my vision blurred. "I worked overtime until 2 a.m. yesterday, finally managed to finish the work at hand." The moment I stood up, I suddenly collapsed to the ground. As I fell, all I could think was, screw this overtime, screw this 996. In my next life, I want to be a pampered young lady, spending every day eating, drinking, and having fun, just idling away my time. When I woke up again, I had transmigrated into a book that my friend had been desperately recommending to me a month ago. In this book titled The Tragic Love of the Overbearing CEO, the female lead, Bella Green, comes from the wealthy Green family. The Green family has numerous businesses and assets worth billions. However, Bella Green is not happy because her father is too busy with work and neglects to spend time with her. So Bella Green decided to adopt a playmate for herself, someone to keep her company and play with every day. Today was the day when 5-year-old Bella Green would come to the orphanage to adopt a child. Her gaze fell on the boy in the farthest corner, whose appearance was exceptionally clean and neat. George Smith, the playmate Bella Green had adopted for herself. In the near future, she regarded George Smith as her entire world. She spent her allowance on him, gave him the best things, and after her father's unexpected death, she handed over the entire Green family to him. But George Smith did not love her. His heart was always with his childhood sweetheart from the orphanage. For the sake of his childhood sweetheart, George Smith hurt Bella Green time and time again. Not only did he draw Bella Green's blood for the sake of the little green plum's accident, but he also wanted to dig out Bella Green's kidney for the little green plum's kidney disease. In order to please George Smith, Bella Green not only let him draw blood but also donated a kidney to the little green plum. The final result was that Bella Green developed a postoperative infection and died directly after Bella Green's death. George Smith finally realized that the person he loved was Bella Green. He regrets, he suffers, he blames himself. He began searching for women who resembled Bella Green closely. Yet he never married for the rest of his life. The entire city of S-City says that George Smith is the most devoted man, that Bella Green, to be loved so deeply by George Smith, is truly fortunate. Okay, with billions in wealth, yet drowning in boundless loneliness. Is that it? Damn, with so much money, can you even figure out how to spend it all by yourself? Bella, David Green, seeing that I hadn't spoken for a while, bent down to look at me. Have you made up your mind? Which brother do you want to adopt? My gaze swept over the boys standing before me. Apart from George Smith, the orphanage had brought in 4 other boys for us to choose from. George Smith stood at the very edge. Compared to the other 4 boys, he was dressed in a white shirt, with his hair neatly combed back. He looked much cleaner than those 4 boys. Looking at George Smith like this, I remembered what he said in the book when he despised Bella Green. Do you think I wanted to be adopted by you, if you hadn't brought me back? I could have stayed at the orphanage and taken care of Sarah. It's all because of you that Sarah has had such a lonely and miserable life. He kept saying it was because of Bella Green, that he didn't want to be adopted, but looking at his outfit today, it was clear he had put on his best clothes. It seemed George Smith also understood what being adopted meant. I sneered inwardly. But when I looked up at David Green again, my expression was all innocence and naivety. Dad, are we poor? David Green was taken aback for a moment. Bella, if our family isn't poor, can we adopt all these little brothers? I pointed at the 4 boys in front, but deliberately left out George Smith. Bella, David Green was startled by my words. Dad, I've thought it over. Having just one brother isn't enough. I want more people to play with me. I thought about how, in the original story, David Green remained unmarried his whole life for the sake of Bella Green, meticulously planning and paving the way for his daughter's future. If it weren't for Bella Green bringing it upon herself, she would never have ended up in such a situation. Daddy, please say yes. I imitated the manner of a 5-year-old girl, tugging at David Green's hand, trying to get him to agree. David Green clearly had no way to deal with me. All right, whatever Princess Bella says goes. Then it's settled. Let's go with those 4. I pointed my hand and directly included all 4 little boys in front. My move left the middle-aged man from earlier stunned. He looked at me, then at the 5 children, and finally his gaze returned to me. Miss Green, look, this child is called George Smith. He's a very well-behaved child in our orphanage. Won't you consider him? No, I won't. I shot George Smith a glare. What was there to consider about an ungrateful wretch like him? Didn't you say that adopting him would be a humiliation? Then I suppose I have no choice but to spare you from this humiliation. George Smith stood to the side, his face pale, his entire demeanor appearing extremely gloomy. Dad, the person has been chosen. Let's go. All right. David Green doted on me the most. Whatever I said, he would follow. Since Bella has made her choice, let's go. I was satisfied and glanced at the 4 boys. You, come with me. The 4 boys were pleasantly surprised. After exchanging a look, they quickly followed behind us, leaving George Smith alone behind. He stood there with his head hanging very low. As we left with those 4 boys, I saw a little girl crouching alone in a corner of the orphanage yard. She was very pretty, but with her super short hair, she looked like a boy. I remembered from the original book that the childhood sweetheart, Sarah Lincoln, said there was a girl in the orphanage who always bullied her. That girl had short hair, just like a boy, but the bullying Sarah Lincoln mentioned was simply that he didn't give in to her at all, unlike other boys who would. What's wrong with him not giving in to you? Who are you that he should give in to you? Could it be that the girl mentioned in the book is this very one? I let go of David Green's hand and walked toward the little girl. The little girl was wearing ill-fitting clothes, squatting in the corner, drawing with a twig. The drawing was quite ugly, like a ghost scribble. What are you drawing? The little girl was startled by my voice. She abruptly stood up, forgetting that she had been squatting on the ground. As a result, she ended up sitting directly on the floor. The moment she looked up at me, I got a clear view of her face. Apart from her short hair, her entire appearance looked incredibly delicate, with a delicate oval face and a pair of phoenix eyes that were clearly defined in black and white. It was foreseeable that she would grow up to be a beauty. Thinking of her tragic end in the original story, where she opposed Sarah Lincoln and met a miserable fate, I pointed my finger and turned to look at David Green. Dad, I want this older sister too. David Green was completely bewildered by me. Bella, you can't do this, can't I? I pouted, with a hint of grievance. But this big sister is so pretty. I really like her. I want her to come home and keep me company. I looked at David Green, once again showing a pleading expression in my eyes. Dad, look at how beautiful this big sister is. If I had someone like her at home, I could eat 2 extra bowls of rice. After all, beauty is a feast for the eyes. Pfft. David Green couldn't help but laugh at my words. Bella, where did you learn all this? I don't care, Dad. I want this big sister. We've already adopted 4. 1 more won't make a difference. David Green looked helpless. All right, you have the final say. Thank you, Dad. You're the best. I held on to David Green's arm, beaming with a radiant smile, seeing how happy I was. David Green didn't hesitate to say to the director, then we'll take this girl home with us as well. But, it's fine, my daughter likes it. David Green said this, and as I looked at him, I remembered that in the original book, shortly after Bella Green was born, her mother passed away from a sudden illness. With his wife passing away early, David Green doted on his only daughter to the point of indulgence. In the Green household, Bella Green alone had 6 nannies, 8 chefs, 4 pastry chefs, and was also assigned 3 nutritionists. There is even a dedicated family doctor, with everyone solely serving Bella Green. Yet, even under such circumstances, Bella Green remains unhappy because she feels that her father cannot accompany her, leaving her very lonely. But David Green is the wealthiest person, busy to the point of being constantly on the go every day. That's why Bella Green suggested adopting a child to keep her company. But who would have thought that the adopted child, George Smith, would turn out to be an ungrateful wretch? Now that I'm here, I'm not the same Bella Green as before. With me around, that ungrateful wretch won't get a single advantage from our family. Dad's assistant is very capable. In this short time, he has already taken care of all the procedures. I held the little girl's hand and walked beside David Green. The remaining 4 boys followed behind us. Just as we were about to leave the orphanage, George Smith grew anxious. He led a little girl out and quickly blocked our path. "Uncle, could you adopt us too?" George Smith lowered his head, and I saw his tightly clenched fists, along with a fleeting look of shame in his eyes. Standing beside him was, of course, his favorite childhood sweetheart, Sarah Lincoln, whom he had been longing for over a decade. "TSK, adopt you, you call it humiliation. What, now that I'm not adopting you, you're rushing to be humiliated by me? Not only do you want to be adopted yourself, but you also want me to adopt Sarah Lincoln? Where do you get the nerve?" David Green clearly didn't expect such a situation. He frowned and was about to refuse. The dean stepped forward at the right moment. "Mr. Green, this child is very outstanding. He always ranks first in school exams. He is also very clever, and as for her, they have always had a very good relationship. The 2 of them have always taken care of each other." "No," I cut in before David Green could respond, lifting my small face and casting a rather displeased glance at George Smith. "I've already picked 5. Our family doesn't need any more children." George Smith's face flushed red, and Sarah Lincoln, whose hand he was holding, was the same. Sarah Lincoln's gaze fell on the little girl I was holding, a flicker of jealousy flashing in her eyes. However, when she turned to face me again, her expression had completely changed. "Miss Green, I and George both like you very much. We also want to be your older brother and sister, to play with you and take care of you. Please, will you adopt us?" "No." I looked at Sarah Lincoln and George Smith, feeling the little girl beside me clench her fists the moment Sarah Lincoln spoke. "Can't you understand what I'm saying?" I said. "I've already picked the big brother and big sister I like. I don't like the 2 of you, and I don't want you to play with me. Do you understand?" George Smith and Sarah Lincoln turned pale, both seemingly caught off guard by my bluntness. I looked up at David Green. "Dad, let's go." "All right." David Green nodded, took my hand, and walked outside. George Smith hung his head, and finally, he knelt down before David Green. "Mr. Green, please adopt me. I will repay you in the future." Everyone else present was stunned. The dean looked shocked, and finally turned his gaze to David Green. "Mr. Green, what do you think?" David Green didn't speak, just looked at me. "Bella." I watched George Smith's performance, wondering if this guy had been reborn like in some stories. Whether you are or not, as long as I'm here, you won't have a chance to shine." I patted the little girl's hand beside me, released her, and took a step forward. I looked down at George Smith, who was now a few inches shorter than me. After kneeling, my tone quite unkind. "You say you want us to adopt you?" "Yes, please adopt me." "Us? I can adopt you, sure, but between you and her, I only want one." David Green's expression was complicated, but in the end, he didn't stop me from speaking. I watched as George Smith looked up and met my shocked gaze, smiling like a malicious supporting female character. "Didn't you understand? You and her, between the 2 of you, I can only take one." George Smith and Sarah Lincoln's expressions changed, and the 2 exchanged a glance. Just as Sarah Lincoln was about to speak, George Smith stood up first. "Then, please adopt me." Looking at Sarah Lincoln's stunned expression, I couldn't help but laugh. "All right, then it's you, Brother George." Sarah Lincoln's face was pale, her expression full of shock as she looked at George Smith. George Smith seemed oblivious to Sarah Lincoln's expression, his gaze fixed solely on me. Miss Green, please take me away. I looked at the pleading expression on George Smith's face and the flicker of humiliation in his eyes. Is this already humiliating? This is just the beginning, Dad. I turned to David Green. Since this brother has said so, let's take him along. David Green's brow was furrowed so tightly it could have crushed a mosquito. Bella, you. He didn't know what I was doing. Raising 6 children is no different from raising 7. He doesn't understand why I'm doing this. He doesn't understand. But he doesn't object either. In the end, I took George Smith and 5 other children back to the Green family. Before getting into the car, I noticed Sarah Lincoln standing at the entrance of the orphanage. Her gaze upon me was filled with envy, yet when she looked at George Smith, her eyes held nothing but hatred. Good hate. Let her hate. The one who claimed in the past life that they couldn't take care of you because of me has now, in this life, personally given up the right to care for you. You hate him. So you can't hate me anymore. The Green family's house is very large. Besides the main villa, there are 2 auxiliary buildings at the back specifically for the staff to live in. I held the little girl's hand all the way and walked through the door. The remaining 4 boys followed behind us, all of them looking a bit uneasy, especially when they saw the opulence before them. I could tell the little girl didn't even know which foot to step forward with first. Come in. The butler, Miller uncle, had already received the news. He knew I was bringing back the adopted children, but when he saw the row of children before him, he was still taken aback. Bella, this, Miller uncle. I pointed to the 5 children in front. Arrange 5 rooms for them to stay in. All right. The villa was very large, not to mention the annex building at the back. Just the main building in the front had dozens of rooms, so 5 rooms were no big deal. Miller uncle was a top-tier butler, the kind with an annual salary of $1 million. Anything entrusted to him was always handled flawlessly. Miller uncle looked at the children before him. Bella, what are their names? I turned around and looked at the little girl standing beside me. What's your name? My name is. The little girl had only spoken 2 words when I raised my hand. All right, from now on, your name will be Mia Green. I pointed to the 4 boys behind her. You are Leo Green, you are Alan Green, you are Sam Green, and you are Harry Green. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, all 5 elements are present. Perfect. Everything was arranged. I turned to look at Miller uncle. Tomorrow, have someone go and register their household registration. David Green, who had been following me, finally couldn't hold back after witnessing my series of actions today. Bella, they have their own names. I know, but our family adopted them, didn't we? Since our family adopted them, they are now the Green family's children. Since they are part of the Green family, naturally they should take the Green surname and be given our family's names. My gaze swept over the children. Of course, if you are unwilling to change your surname or don't want to be called by these names, you can leave now. I will arrange for someone to take you back to the orphanage, and I can also have my father support you until you turn 18. Several children stepped forward and said in unison, "We are willing." The loudest voice was Mia Green's. Her eyes were firm, and it was clear that she truly meant it. That's right, the first step of adoption is to make them understand that in this family, I have the final say. I certainly don't want these people to turn into ungrateful wolves like George Smith in the future. I never mentioned the arrangements for George Smith, so before taking Mia Green and the others away, Miller uncle had to ask first, Bella, this little friend, him. My gaze swept over George Smith's face, and I suddenly smiled. Let's call him 6 Green. After all, the 5 are already accounted for. Miller uncle speechless, David Green speechless. I looked at George Smith's changed expression. Is he already unhappy? You don't like the name 6 Green, then let's call you Unhappy Green. After all, you don't like any of them. I saw the expressions on the faces of Mia Green and the other children, all showing a hint of relief. After all, names like Mia Green and Leo Green sounded much better compared to 6 Green or Unhappy Green. George Smith's face turned pale. He felt humiliated. He lowered his gaze, his hands clenched tightly into fists at his sides. I don't want to change my name. Can I not change it? David Green was an old hand in the world, and in just this short moment, he had already noticed something was off. He looked at me, about to speak, but I smiled first. Sure, if you don't want to change it, then don't. If you like it, you can keep calling yourself George Smith. I don't want him to have the surname Green either. He doesn't deserve it. I turned to look at Miller uncle. Miller uncle, arrange for someone to register Leo Green and the others for household registration tomorrow. George Smith doesn't need to be included, after all. He doesn't bear the surname Smith, so he can't be considered one of our Green family. I saw George Smith's body sway slightly. He looked at me, his lips moving as if he wanted to take back what he had just said, but I won't give him the chance. I smiled and looked at Miller uncle. There should still be rooms in the back annex, right? Let George Smith stay there. All right, I'll go make the arrangements right away. After saying that, Miller uncle waved someone over and had them take George Smith to the back annex. George Smith stood motionless, looking at me with a complicated gaze. It was clear that even though he was young, he now understood the difference between bearing the surname Green and not bearing it, but he had already said he didn't want to change his name, and now going back on his word would be a reversal. At this moment, he was still young and inexperienced, but his self-esteem was extremely strong, and he was unwilling to contradict himself and change his mind. I ignored him. For this kind of ungrateful person who wants everything without giving anything in return, I know exactly how to hit him where it hurts. Miller uncle moved quickly. Leo Green and the other four were all assigned rooms on the second floor. Each room had the same layout, with the only difference being the varying styles of decoration. I could tell that Mia Green's eyes lit up when she saw her room, which was over 50 or 60 square meters at the orphanage. Several people shared a room, not only having to squeeze in with others, but the room for several people wasn't even as big as my family's bathroom. Everyone was a bit uneasy, especially Mia Green, who stood at the doorway, completely afraid to step into such a room. As exquisite as one fit for a princess, Miller uncle truly lived up to his reputation as a top-tier butler. Standing at the doorway, his gaze swept over the 5 young faces before him, and he spoke softly. It was only because Bella decided to adopt you that you were able to come to the Green family. Bella is kind-hearted and willing to treat you as siblings. You must learn to be grateful. From now on, everything you do should prioritize Bella. Miller uncle's voice was soft, but his words carried great weight. If you dare to upset Bella, don't blame me for sending you back. Of course, if you do well, the Green family can also ensure your future. Standing at the corner, I felt very satisfied with Miller uncle's stern words to the children. In fact, this passage also appears in the original book. On the first day George Smith was adopted by the Green family, Miller uncle had similarly admonished him, yet such a straightforward and honest statement completely broke George Smith's defenses. For many years afterward, he considered it an insult from the Green family and from Miller uncle. Later, when he gained power, the first thing he did was to dismiss Miller uncle, and he even hired someone to break Miller uncle's leg. Fortunately, compared to George Smith, these children were still normal people. Mia Green was the first to express his stance. Uncle, rest assured, I will definitely take good care of Miss Bella. Same here. Leo Green followed suit, then came Alan Green, Harry Green, and Sam Green. All the children had expressed their stance, and Miller uncle nodded in approval. From now on, you can just call me Miller uncle. If there's anything at home, come to me first. Don't worry, as long as you can keep Miss Bella happy, what you'll receive will definitely be more than what you got at the orphanage. With Miller uncle's guidance, the group tidied up the belongings they had brought from the orphanage and settled comfortably into their own rooms. During dinner, I sat to the left of David Green, with the 5 Leo Green children seated across from me. I saw the longing in their eyes as they scanned the large table full of dishes, not to mention the regular dishes like chicken, duck, fish, and pork, which were all prepared with perfect color, aroma, and taste. There were also fresh Australian lobsters and king crabs flown in by air. Forget the 5 kids. Even I, a corporate drone, was drooling at the sight of this feast. What are you waiting for? Let's dig in. I glanced at David Green, and at his signal, everyone began to eat. David Green noticed that my appetite had improved significantly compared to before, a look of shock and relief flashing in his eyes. Bella has a good appetite today. Of course, I'm in a good mood. A table full of delicacies, all prepared by top-tier chefs. When I died from overwork due to the 996 schedule, how could I have ever imagined that one day I'd be blessed with such fortune? I glanced at David Green, remembering that my current enjoyment was all thanks to him. Being quite considerate, I picked up a piece of abalone and placed it in David Green's bowl. Dad, you have some too. David Green looked at the abalone in his bowl, feeling deeply comforted. He never expected that adopting a few children would actually prove useful. Not only was his daughter eating faster and more, but she even knew to be filial to her old father. I ate heartily, and after the initial awkwardness, Leo Green and the others also started to eat. The delicious food lit up their little faces. Although they still followed the rules, their eating pace noticeably quickened. Eat slowly. David Green looked on with affection, and the atmosphere in the entire dining room was warm and joyful. Just at that moment, George Smith's voice came from outside. I paid no attention, believing that Miller uncle could handle it. I focused on eating, while Mia Green and the others paused their meal when they heard the commotion. Only after noticing that neither David Green nor I reacted did they continue. After the meal, I finally had a chance to ask Miller uncle what was going on. It turned out that George Smith had already settled in the rear annex building. However, during the meal, I heard that Mia Green and a few others were eating in the main building up front and were also planning to come over. I sneered. The Green family was very generous to the hired chefs and nannies, even in the annex building. The daily meals consisted of 8 dishes and 1 soup. I believe this level is certainly better than what an orphanage could offer, but George Smith is still not satisfied and wants to come to the main building for meals. He really thinks he's something special. What did you say? Miller uncle could tell what I was thinking just by looking at my expression. He handed me the peeled fruit and said, I told him that without your and the master's permission, he could never come to the main building. That's right. I looked at Miller uncle, my upturned face carrying a hint of innocence. Miller uncle, from now on, George Smith is not allowed to come to the main building. The Green family has already done more than enough by taking him in, providing him with food and clothing, and supporting his education. Tell him that if he's not satisfied, he can go back to the orphanage. In the original story, Bella Green gave George Smith both money and resources. Let's see what kind of future you, George Smith, can have without me, the fool who foots the bill. As for Mia Green and the others, tomorrow, arrange for someone to not only handle the enrollment procedures for Mia Green and the others but also take the opportunity to see what they excel at. Alternatively, ask Mia Green and the others if they have anything they want to learn, and we can hire teachers for them. I understand. Miller uncle looked at me with a hint of approval in his eyes. Bella is becoming more and more like the master in demeanor. David Green, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. With Bella being so sensible, I can rest assured about flying to M country tomorrow. After saying this, he still carefully watched me, afraid that I might be unhappy. I smiled and waved my hand. It's okay, Dad, you go ahead and do your work. I'll take good care of myself. David Green, I used to think about my daughter being more sensible, but now that she really is, why does it feel a bit sad? I remembered that in the original book, David Green unexpectedly fell ill and passed away when Bella Green was 20 years old. I don't know if it's the power of the plot or if the author intentionally designed it this way. Anyway, as long as I'm here, I won't allow such a thing to happen. Dad, no matter how busy you are, you must take care of your health. I've already lost my mom. I can't lose you too. David Green looked at me, his eyes even turning a little red, reaching out to rub the top of my head. He nodded gently. All right. Bella has grown up. Dad will take care of himself. Dad, I'm actually quite lazy. You have to live a long life. I'm still counting on you to earn money and support me. All right, Dad will definitely live a long life. I want to watch over and take care of Bella for a lifetime. I am not Bella Green. I wouldn't feel lost just because David Green isn't home. Besides, I now have 5 playmates. Leo Green, the eldest of the 5 children, is 9 years old this year, and the second is Alan Green, who is 8. Harry Green and Sam Green are both 7 years old, while Mia Green, like me, is 6. Miller uncle was highly efficient, managing to complete the enrollment procedures for all of us in just one day. Leo Green was in the 4th grade, Alan Green in the 3rd, and Harry Green and Sam Green in the 2nd. As for Mia Green, she was naturally placed in the same class as me. Just like that, I went from being a 9 to 5 office worker to a 1st grade elementary school student. And, as expected, Mia Green was in the same class as me. According to Miller uncle's words, he hoped Mia Green would take on the responsibility of looking after me. The 1st grade curriculum was far too simple for someone like me, a corporate drone, but as the daughter of the wealthiest man, it turned out that David Green's cultivation of his daughter was anything but casual: piano, violin, painting, calligraphy, chess, judo, and even horseback riding. There were over a dozen subjects she had to study, all piled together. Bella Green would be unhappy for this very reason. Now that I'm here, with so many things to learn, of course I won't learn them all. Thinking back to my past life, I always felt I lacked artistic talent. After trying countless times, I realized I truly had no gift for music, so things like piano and violin are out of the question. But it doesn't matter if I have no talent. Aren't there still 5 others? I refuse to believe that none of them have any talent. After a month of trial and observation, in the end, each of the 5 Green siblings took on more than 2 extracurricular training activities. To my surprise, Mia Green not only chose piano and chess but also insisted on learning judo and sanda. Everyone was very serious and did not see these studies as a burden, especially Mia Green. I had seen her fierce determination when learning sanda. Leo Green, who sparred with her for the first time, was even thrown to the ground because he underestimated her. This minor antagonist in the book is a bit hot-tempered, but I like it, because Mia Green defeated Leo Green. I even gave her a little reward, a very exquisite doll. Study hard, and I'll be counting on you to protect me in the future. Mia Green held the doll in her hands, her eyes lighting up. Bella, don't worry, I will study hard, really hard, and I will definitely protect you well. She looked as if she was ready to go through fire and water for me. No need to be so dramatic, however. After being provoked by me like that, Leo Green and the others also started to go all out. Seeing such a sight, I am greatly comforted. See, the original Bella Green was simply not right in the head. Adopting only George Smith made him take everything for granted, with no sense of competition at all. Now I've adopted 5 at once. Isn't the effect obvious? Leo Green and the others are doing well, not only studying hard but also constantly making their presence felt in front of me, trying to boost my favorability. Compared to their liveliness and fulfillment, George Smith is just that good. Like Alan Green, who is also 8 years old, he naturally has to go to school. With me around, he can forget about attending a prestigious school. Using the family car to take him to and from school was even more of a dream. The nearest public elementary school was about an hour's drive from the villa. George Smith had to walk out of the villa area every day and then take the bus to school. As a result, George Smith spent at least 2.5 hours on the road every day. Not to mention, I would never let him learn anything else. It's impossible for him to be groomed into a noble young master by the Green family like in his previous life. Moreover, I mentioned to Miller uncle the reason why George Smith was brought back. Unlike Leo Green and the others, who were carefully selected by me, George Smith practically begged us to adopt him. I made it clear that I was displeased, and although the other members of the Green family wouldn't go out of their way to make things difficult for him, they certainly wouldn't show him much respect either. As a result, George Smith couldn't take it anymore, especially when he had Leo Green and a few others around as a constant comparison. When Mia Green and I got into the car to go to school, he approached me. Bella, I frowned at his form of address, my gaze sweeping over the new clothes George Smith had deliberately changed into and his neatly combed hair. You may call me Miss Bella, or you can use my full name, Bella Green. The nickname, Bella, is not for you to use. My straightforward and unsparing words immediately made George Smith's face flush with embarrassment. Bella Green, could you have the family driver drop me off at school as well? I looked at George Smith's lowered brows and eyes, completely unyielding. No. George Smith looked up, staring at me with an expression of disbelief. I lifted my chin, my gaze meeting his directly. It's not on the way. Leo Green and I attended a private school, which was in the opposite direction from the villa. When I said it wasn't on the way, I wasn't lying. Then, could you ask Miller uncle to arrange a car to take me to school? George Smith seemed to have realized during this time that circumstances are stronger than people, and his voice was full of pleading. I have to take an hour-long bus ride to school every day. It's really inconvenient. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh, as if he didn't have to take the bus to school when he was in the orphanage, then go back to the orphanage. That way, you won't have to take the bus to school every day. I spoke without the slightest courtesy, and the driver promptly opened the car door. Bella Green, what exactly have I done wrong? I turned to get into the car, and George Smith spoke up once again. Why are you treating me like this? He blocked my way to get on the car, his gaze filled with confusion. How have I treated you? They, George Smith pointed at Leo Green and the others. Why can they ride in your car? Because their surname is Green. They are members of the Green family. What, is there a problem? George Smith gritted his teeth, and after a long moment, he spoke as if he had thrown caution to the wind. I can also change my surname to Green and become a member of the Green family. I thought the male lead would have more backbone than this, but it seems I was wrong. Is that so? But I no longer wish for you to bear the surname Green. I looked at George Smith's stunned face, speaking with utter bluntness. You are not worthy. No matter how scheming George Smith may be, he is still just a child now. Hearing me say this, he looked utterly devastated. I didn't care about his reaction and turned to get into the car. Sitting in the stretch Lincoln, Leo Green and the others watched my expression, falling silent for a moment. Among the children, the relatively lively Alan Green tentatively spoke up. Bella, don't you like George Smith? That's right, I don't like him. Is there a problem? My completely unapologetic attitude took Leo Green and the others by surprise. After spending this time together, they had come to understand my personality quite well. Harry Green, who had a relatively fiery temper, nodded beside them. I don't like him either. Noticing that I was looking at him, Harry Green scratched his head. He's the biggest faker. Back at the orphanage, I got the short end of the stick because of him. Hearing this, I perked up with interest. What kind of trouble did you get into? Harry Green glanced at Leo Green and the others, noticing they were all leaning in, ears perked up, eager to hear more. He and that Sarah Lincoln came to the orphanage together. That Sarah Lincoln was a real crybaby. No one even bothered her, but she always acted like she was being bullied, and then George Smith would step in to defend her. Once, some kind-hearted people came to the orphanage to donate items. There was a picture book that I clearly picked up first. It had just fallen on the ground, but Sarah Lincoln insisted that she had taken it first, and even claimed that I had intentionally knocked it out of her hands. George Smith heard this and stood up for her. I refused to back down and ended up fighting with him. Later, I was scolded by the director. What made Harry Green most angry was that, even though he hadn't started the conflict, he ended up receiving a harsher punishment than George Smith. After Harry Green finished speaking, Alan Green nodded in agreement. Sarah Lincoln cries at the drop of a hat. She cries over everything, and whenever she cries, the director assumes we've bullied her. Some of these things I know, some I do not. To tell the truth, George Smith and Sarah Lincoln can indeed be called childhood sweethearts. The two grew up as neighbors, side by side. Later, the houses they lived in caught fire. The parents of both families were unable to escape. George Smith and Sarah Lincoln were playing in the neighborhood at the time and narrowly escaped the disaster. However, the two of them became orphans as a result and were sent to an orphanage. George Smith felt that he knew Sarah Lincoln and that she was his responsibility, so he took care of her in every way. It turned out that George Smith's parents were acquainted with the director of the orphanage, which also led the director to keep a closer eye on the two of them. When David Green went to the orphanage to propose adopting a child, it was the director who reminded George Smith to behave well. Before David Green arrived at the orphanage, he had laid a lot of groundwork, constantly praising how good George Smith was. In the original book, the reason Bella Green took a liking to George Smith at first sight was also partly due to the director, Mia Green, being relatively calm and steady, couldn't help but speak up while Leo Green and the others were talking. Last time, kind-hearted people donated a lot of clothes and shoes to the institution. There was a hair clip that I clearly got first, but Sarah Lincoln said she liked it, and George Smith snatched it for her without a second thought. After that, Mia Green never grew her hair long again, simply because she no longer had any use for pretty hair clips. I reached out and gently pinched Mia Green's cheek. It's okay, grow your hair out. I'll buy you any hair clip you want. Such a beautiful face can never be overdone with any kind of makeup. Mia Green's face flushed instantly. No, it's fine, short hair is quite convenient, but I want to see what Mia looks like with long hair. Mia Green's face turned even redder. Then I'll grow it out. Good girl. I reached out and stroked Mia Green's face once more. Her little face was so tender, it felt like you could squeeze water right out of her skin. I didn't dwell on that little incident with George Smith. if he really felt uncomfortable staying with the Green family and wanted to return to the orphanage, I would actually respect him more, but I know very well that George Smith would never go back. George Smith indeed did not return to the orphanage. He was well aware that even without being registered under the Green family's household or changing his surname to theirs, his current life was far better than the one he had in the orphanage. I was not at all surprised by his choice. After my previous humiliation, George Smith, surprisingly, did not cause any more trouble. He took the bus to school every day, and occasionally, when he saw me going out with Leo Green and a few others, he no longer took the initiative to come up and speak. I thought he had settled down. If he had been a bit more well-behaved, the Green family might have been willing to give him a bite to eat. In the blink of an eye, several months passed. That day, as soon as we returned from school, we ran into George Smith at the entrance. It was clear he had been waiting there specifically for me. Mia Green saw him and immediately stepped in front of me. Besides her, Leo Green and a few others quickly followed. The 5 children lined up in a row before me. A scene that, aside from being amusing, also moved me a little. After these months of getting along, Mia Green and the others had genuinely come to see me as their little sister. They also consider me their responsibility, even though I don't need such accountability. However, their actions still make me feel very warm. I'm not afraid of what George Smith might dare to do, not to mention he's still just a child now. Even if he were an adult, I wouldn't take him seriously. Something wrong. George Smith looked at Mia Green and the others standing in front of me, then turned his gaze to me, his voice gaining a bit more confidence. I have something to tell you. Tell them to step aside. Just say whatever it is directly. I didn't give George Smith any face at all. George Smith once again wore that expression of being humiliated by me. In the end, it was a case of being under someone else's roof and having to bow one's head. He took out a piece of paper from behind his back. This is my report card. My eyes swept over it, seeing a sea of red marks, all perfect scores of 100. With a puzzled look on my face, I asked, and then, George Smith's face flushed bright red. I got perfect scores in all subjects, not just first in my class. I'm also first in the whole grade. I think I have the right to live in the main building, to become a member of the Green family. So this is what he was waiting for. Before I could even react, Alan Green laughed first. He glanced at me, saw I wasn't angry, and directly pulled out his report card and awards from his backpack. See clearly, I'm the top student in my grade, and I'm also a 3 good student. Alan Green nudged Harry Green, who understood and pulled out his report card and certificates from his bag. Is getting a perfect score in every subject really that impressive? Isn't that just the norm? Besides his report card and 3 good student award, Harry Green also had the first prize in the city's piano competition. See clearly, first place, George Smith's face turned from red to white. He wanted to say something. Harry Green reached out toward Mia Green. Mia Green glanced at George Smith and, at my signal, also took out his report card. Mia Green, first in all subjects, model student, first place in the citywide Go competition. Leo Green, take yours out too. Leo Green was older and the most mature and steady among them. He didn't listen to Harry Green and take out his report card. He turned and glanced at me. Bella, it's time for your afternoon tea. Don't waste time on someone like this. I smiled. Great, Aunt Miller had someone make mango pudding today, and there's also strawberry pudding that Mia loves. Let's hurry inside. We walked past George Smith without paying him any attention. He stood there holding that report card, looking like a complete clown. Just as I was about to enter the door, he spoke up again. That's not fair. I paused mid-step and turned to look at him. What's not fair? You go to a private school where money gets you in. I raised an eyebrow. Who told you that money alone can get you into a private school? If private schools didn't value academic performance and only cared about money, then why would so many wealthy people insist on sending their children to private schools? Isn't that the case? George Smith glared at me, his eyes seeming to blaze with fire. The Green family has both money and influence. I imagine your teacher would also give face to the Green family. I stared at George Smith's unsportsmanlike expression and couldn't help but sneer. George Smith, I could have someone bring over a set of exam papers right now for you, Alan Green, and Harry Green to take together, then you would understand the gap between you, but I'm not willing to. What are you? Why should I make them prove themselves for your sake? George Smith's face wasn't just pale now. It had turned ashen. Bella Green, you're going too far. I am bullying you, so what are you going to do about it? I pointed toward the door, feeling unhappy. Fine, leave now, get out of the Green family. I don't mind, or, you can go back to the orphanage. I can tell the director that you didn't want to stay with the Green family, so you went back. How about that? George Smith froze, staring at me blankly, unable to understand why things had turned out this way. He always felt it shouldn't have been like this. I had no interest in caring about what George Smith thought. My time is precious, and I don't want to waste it on someone like him. George Smith, let me tell you, in the Green family, what I say goes. I don't like you, I even despise you. If you want to stay, then keep your head down and behave. If you want to leave, just go, no need to tell me, I don't care. After throwing out those words, without another glance at George Smith's ugly expression, I led Mia Green and the others inside. Behind me, George Smith stood there, the report card in his hand already fallen to the ground. He stood with his head bowed, backlit in the shadows. To those unaware, he might have seemed pitiful, only I knew the wolfish ambition that lay hidden within George Smith's heart. Mia Green glanced at me, his face full of unspoken words. What's wrong? Do you think I'm too heartless? Mia Green shook her head, her voice firm. If Bella did this, she must have had her reasons. Bella doesn't like George Smith, which means it's his fault. Exactly. If Bella doesn't like someone, it must be the other person's fault. Alan Green chimed in from the side, and although Leo Green and the others didn't speak, their expressions clearly conveyed the same sentiment. I laughed. This feeling of being mindlessly defended by someone isn't half bad. After that incident of showing off the report card, George Smith completely quieted down. Since he didn't come to provoke me anymore, I simply acted as if he didn't exist in the house. The Green family kept him around. Just one more mouth to feed. More importantly, I want him to spend his life watching wealth right before his eyes, yet forever out of reach. Bella, you look so beautiful today. Mia Green looked at me sitting in front of the mirror putting on makeup and brought over a box. This is what my uncle just asked me to bring over. She opened the box, revealing an exceptionally dazzling set of purple diamond jewelry. It perfectly matched the light purple gown I was wearing. Mia Green took out the necklace from inside and placed it around my neck. Today she was dressed in a fitted black suit, her long hair casually tied into a bun at the back of her head with a jade hairpin. Despite being only in her 20s, she looked as mature as someone in her 30s. It suits you well, Mia Green sincerely praised, producing a box from behind. Bella, happy graduation, and happy birthday. Thank you. Today is not only the day I graduate from Yale University, but also my birthday. David Green decided to throw a big celebration. To be honest, I don't really have any particular feelings about celebrating my birthday. After all, as early as when I was 18, David Green held a very grand coming-of-age ceremony for me. In the original book, during Bella Green's 18th birthday coming-of-age ceremony, she pestered David Green into arranging her marriage with George Smith. After David Green passed away, Bella Green had no one to rely on and placed all her hopes and emotions on George Smith. Now, because of me, David Green is still busy with work, but with the annual checkups and the additional special assistants I specifically requested to help share his workload, David Green not only didn't pass away when Bella Green turned 20, as in the original book. Instead, with my reminders, he looks even healthier and younger than before. I can be sure that with David Green's current condition, he can easily live another 30 or 40 years. Most importantly, with my reminders, David Green avoided several pitfalls that the original book had set for the Green family to highlight George Smith's abilities. It was just a young kid, but the author, in order to emphasize how impressive George Smith was, went so far as to have a high school student offer advice to David Green, which David Green actually accepted. With me here, the one offering advice became me. As for George Smith, he didn't even get a chance to approach the main building, let alone make contact with David Green. More importantly, having spent his entire life in public schools, he simply had no chance to come into contact with so many outstanding second-generation entrepreneurs. Without first-hand information, how could he possibly demonstrate his abilities? Thanks to my repeated reminders, David Green not only avoided pitfalls but also multiplied his profits several times over. In his eyes, My daughter is now a walking gold nugget. I don't care how David Green sees it, whether I take action or not. He is still the father who loves me the most. What makes me happy is that I have cut off all of George Smith's paths in the original story. With Bella Green pouring in resources and hiring top tutors, George Smith managed to get into Yale University, one of China's top institutions at that time. Bella Green had average grades but forced her way into Yale University through the art admissions route, all for George Smith, now without the Green family's resources to invest in him, having always attended public schools. He only managed to get into a top university, of course, compared to the average person. Such an achievement is quite commendable, but when compared to George Smith from the original story, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. I'm not the original Bella Green. Wouldn't it be great to have resources poured into me, one-on-one sessions with various renowned teachers, tailored to provide targeted analysis of challenging problems? Every type of question was meticulously explained by expert teachers, allowing me to master them thoroughly with a wealth of resources poured into my education. I, who had already been admitted to a top-tier 985 university in my previous life, successfully advanced further this time, entering Yale University. During my 4 years in university, I didn't idle away my time either. In the original book, it was written that George Smith made money through some project, so I decided to invest on my own. George Smith was able to earn his first pot of gold largely because he was the adopted son of the Green family. People gave him face and were willing to invest in him. Now that the investor has been replaced by me, knowing the plot, I naturally have an even greater advantage than he does. Happy birthday, Bella. Mia Green had just finished giving her gift, took my hand, and walked with me into the venue. Guests had gathered, and the banquet hadn't started yet. Leo Green and a few others walked over toward me. Leo Green, dressed in a suit, studied law in college and is now the legal advisor of the Green Group. He also runs his own law firm, which has now achieved stable performance. Alan Green, clad in leather and with purple hair, was discovered by a talent scout in high school due to his looks. He debuted by participating in a competitive variety show and, thanks to his strong singing and dancing skills, won the title of First King of the Year in that show. Last year, I gave it a try and made a literary film, which earned me the Best Newcomer award. Now, I've caught the eye of a major director and landed the lead male role in a big IP project. The one in military uniform is Harry Green. I always thought he was the most impatient person, but to my surprise, he ended up getting into the National Defense University. After entering the military academy, he has completely transformed. The impatient Harry Green from before is nowhere to be seen. Completely different from their temperament is Sam Green. This guy truly has talent in the arts, choosing to attend an art academy even with a college entrance exam score close to 700 in his sophomore year. He was already apprenticed to a renowned master and received constant praise from his mentor. This year, his teacher held an art exhibition and, to boost his profile, prominently displayed 3 of Sam Green's works in a prominent location. Without exception, all of these works were successfully auctioned off. Sam Green also quickly rose to become a rising star in the art world. He kept his long hair tied back and wore a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, fitting the image of a true art youth. 4 exceptionally handsome young men stood in a row, presenting their gifts. Everyone present knew that the Green family had adopted several children, and all of them had been raised exceptionally well. Many people privately praised my father for his good judgment, but he would always turn around and praise me instead. Bella isn't just a little lucky star, she also has a good eye for people. After all, it was me who insisted on bringing these people home in the first place. I accepted the gifts from Leo Green and the others, and Mia Green leaned in close to me. Bella, who do you plan to have dance the first dance with you? I don't know when it started, but dancing the first dance with me at my birthday party became one of the things Leo Green and the others would compete for. These guys usually get along really well, but when it comes to this, none of them are willing to back down. In my eyes, all 4 of them are just like brothers to me, yet they always have to fight over who gets to be first in this little matter. I looked at Mia Green in her black suit, a mischievous glint in my eyes. I'll dance with you. Mia Green glanced at my expression and gave a slight nod. All right, as long as Bella is happy. She stood up and reached out her hand to me. I smiled and placed my hand in hers, gliding with her into the center of the dance floor. I looked at Mia Green before me. Among the children, she had changed the most, steady, experienced, yet completely centered around me. Unlike Leo Green and the others, Mia Green, like me, studied finance in college. I know she chose the same major as me to take care of me over the years. Wherever I went, she followed, in my daily life. Clothing, food, shelter, and transportation. Mia Green never wanted to leave it to anyone else, even at school. It was the same. People often mock her behind her back, calling her my sidekick, my nanny, but Mia Green acts as if she doesn't hear it, simply doing what she believes is right, taking care of me. Using Mia Green's hand, I turned in a circle, and when I drew close to her again, I spoke in an extremely soft voice. Mia, you really don't have to do this. I think you could live a life without me. Leo Green and the others chose their own paths when selecting their majors. Although I adopted them, I never intended for them to always listen to me or obey me. After careful consideration, Leo Green and the others chose what they believed was right. However, Mia Green was quite stubborn. She saw me as her responsibility. Bella, my life is you. Mia Green held my shoulder, her expression utterly serious. Bella, unless you find me annoying, I will never leave the Green family, nor will I ever leave you. Finding her annoying was out of the question. Mia Green has not only taken care of me in daily life over the past few years, but she has also handled many other matters perfectly. Often, just by looking at her, she can understand exactly what I need. Having such a perfect assistant has truly saved me a lot of trouble. Mia Green, I just want you to be happy. I rarely call her by her full name, and I genuinely hope for this. Mia Green looked at me, her expression even more serious than mine. Bella, your happiness is my happiness. I was speechless, looking at her. I couldn't help but wonder whether it was right or wrong to have taken her out of the orphanage all those years ago. Mia, if one day you find the life you want, you can tell me directly. Mia Green neither agreed nor disagreed. As if something had occurred to her, she slightly furrowed her brows. There's something I think I should tell you. What? George Smith fell last week and has been in a coma ever since he was taken to the hospital. After George Smith was admitted to university, David Green, for the sake of his reputation, provided him with the tuition fees needed for his studies, but after that, he never paid any further attention to George Smith. After all, he is the male lead in the book. I worry that he might stumble upon some opportunity elsewhere, so I've had people keeping an eye on George Smith. My actions didn't escape Mia Green's notice. She's the one who reports on George Smith's situation to me every month. After graduating from university, George Smith found a job at a company. He had already moved out of the Green family home the year he got into university and now rents a place to live on his own. Every year he would put on a show of returning to the Green family, claiming he was coming to pay New Year's respects to me and David Green. However, after being rejected twice, he stopped coming. The company he works for has no connection whatsoever to the Green family's business. Over the past 2 years, George Smith has seemed relatively well behaved. My attention towards him gradually waned. Did he die? No. They say there's no major physical issue, but he remains unconscious. The doctors are still trying to figure out why. I felt nothing inside. After all, he's the male lead in the book. He shouldn't die that easily, right? Don't worry about him. Anyway, the current George Smith can't stir up any trouble. All right, Mia Green has always followed my lead. Since I said not to worry about it, she didn't bring it up again. I was just thinking that George Smith probably couldn't stir up any trouble this time. But the day after the birthday party, I saw George Smith, dressed in a hospital gown, suddenly appear at the Green family's doorstep. Bella, Bella. As soon as George Smith saw me, he immediately reached out his hands, wanting to embrace me. How could I give him a chance? If Mia Green were here, this guy wouldn't even have a chance to get close to me. Mia Green just went to get my coat and hasn't come down yet. But dealing with a George Smith, I can handle it myself. The long hours of learning Sonda finally came in handy, as I kicked the other person flying with a single strike. George Smith was sent flying, his already weakened body from a recent illness crashing to the ground. I glanced at him with disgust and turned to leave. But I never expected that the severely injured George Smith still had the strength to move. He lunged forward and grabbed my feet. Bella, I love you. He looked up, his weary eyes fixed intently on my face. Bella, I'm so glad you didn't die in this lifetime. I'm so happy. Bella, this must be heaven taking pity on me, knowing how madly I've longed for you. Bella, let's get married. Let's go to the Civil Affairs Bureau right now. Don't worry, I will treat you well for the rest of my life. Bella, with a swift kick, I sent George Smith tumbling away once more, gazing at his frenzied face. An unbelievable thought flashed through my mind. Could this guy have been reborn? Heh, that would be really interesting. I don't understand what you're saying. You'd better leave now. Or when I call security later. It won't be like this. Bella, hearing that I was about to call security, George Smith froze. He looked at me with a face full of shock. Bella, it's me, George Smith, your beloved. George Smith, don't you remember me? You really must be out of your mind. I looked at him coldly, as if he were a piece of trash. When have I ever loved you? You love me, of course you love me. Do you remember? We got engaged when you were 18. Later, George Smith's eyes widened, as if he had only just realized it. He collapsed weakly on the ground, his face filled with disbelief. How could this happen? It shouldn't be like this. I clearly had everything. I clearly succeeded. A few days ago, he had taken a fall, and when he woke up, his mind was flooded with many memories. He remembered, he was adopted by the Green family and became their foster son. He did not change his surname, and later even became engaged to Bella Green, but he did not cherish it well. In his previous life, he lost Bella Green, given another chance. He thought it was heaven's compensation to him, unexpectedly. George Smith kept shaking his head, then looked at me once more. His gaze was too fervent, but in my eyes, being watched like that by him made me feel utterly disgusted. Bella, you love me. The one you love most is me. I regret it. I truly regret it. The one I love most is you. It was too late for me to realize. Bella, after losing you, I was in such agony that I couldn't bear to live, and only then did I truly understand my heart. Only then did I realize that you are the one who loves me most in this world. Bella, listen to me. Heaven has given me a second chance, and it has also made me see clearly my feelings for you. Believe me, in this lifetime, I will cherish you. I won't let you suffer any harm again, I swear. It must be that even the heavens were moved by his deep affection, giving him the chance to start over. George Smith, are you delusional? I glanced at the time. This guy had already wasted 5 minutes of my time. Engage with you. Are you joking? I'm telling the truth. George Smith spoke again, trying to prove that he was serious. In my past life, you brought me back to the Green family, and you fell in love with me. We loved each other. Bella, you have no idea how much I missed the you who loved me. I got goosebumps all over. Missing the Bella Green, who loved George Smith, more like missing the benefits the Green family brought him. If you keep spouting nonsense here, don't blame me for sending you to a mental hospital. George Smith widened his eyes, looking at me in disbelief. You want to send me to a mental hospital? You have delusional disorder. I spoke without the slightest hint of politeness. You'd better leave right now, or I won't mind showing you how rich people solve problems. Bella, how have you become like this? George Smith looked utterly defeated, and I didn't want to waste any more words on someone like him. I took a step back, but George Smith still tried to press forward. Mia Green stepped out, placed the clothes in my hands, and delivered a swift flying kick. Oh, snap! George Smith was sent flying. He lay on the ground, unable to move. Mia Green cast a disgusted glance at him before turning to look at me. Bella, are you okay? I'm fine. Let's go. We're going to be late. All right. Mia Green and I left, leaving George Smith lying there, his whole being as disheveled as if caught in a storm. How could this happen? Why is it completely different now? I didn't take this little incident to heart, but that day, just as I was about to leave after meeting with a client, the result was that I ran into George Smith again outside the restroom of the other company. He was dressed in a suit, looking completely refreshed and well-groomed. George Smith looked at me, his eyes burning with intensity. Bella, I know you just don't remember what happened in your past life. Come with me. I promise I'll make you remember. He reached out to grab my hand, but I dodged to the side, looking at him with utter disgust in my eyes. George Smith, have you had enough of this madness? Bella, believe me, I'm not crazy at all. I'm perfectly clear-headed. What I'm about to say next is all true. We were once in love. You were willing to do anything for me. You gave up everything for me. Bella, I can't live without you. Please believe me. Just come with me once, and you'll know everything I'm saying is true. George Smith was extremely confident, believing that I had lost my memory and couldn't recall the past. As long as I saw the evidence he had for me, I would definitely fall in love with him again. I had no idea where his confidence came from. Looking at the certainty on his face, I shot a meaningful glance at Mia Green, who was about to approach from a distance. She immediately understood, not only stepping back but also finding ways to stop anyone else from coming near. I took a step forward, standing right in front of George Smith. "You say you love me." "Yes, Bella, you are the woman I love most." Thinking I believed him, George Smith excitedly reached out to hug me. I pushed his hand away and took a step forward. "Do you love me, or do you love the Green family's money?" George Smith's eyes widened, looking as if he had been struck by my words. "Bella, how can you say that? Of course, I am the one who loves you." I smiled, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. "You love me, so you drain my blood. You love me, so you take my kidney. You love me, so you watch me suffer from a post-operative infection while you go off to accompany another woman." I watched as George Smith's eyes widened in shock, but I had no intention of stopping there. "You love me, so you just stand by and watch me die, then seize my family's assets and find a replacement who looks like me. You love me, so you change the Green family name to Smith, purge those loyal elders of the Green family, and replace them with your own people." George Smith, if this is your love, then your love truly disgusts me. George Smith widened his eyes, looking at me as if he had seen a ghost. His mouth hung open, unable to find his voice for a long time. You, I looked at George Smith's expression, as if he'd seen a ghost, not bothering to hide the disdain in my eyes or the hatred I was putting on for show. Back when I was reading the novel, it had already given me quite the shock. What is it that I haven't clearly seen in my own heart? If you truly love someone, how could you bear to use them? If you truly love someone, how could you bear to hurt them? Whether it's hurting without hesitation or hurting with hesitation, it's still hurting. Killing someone and then putting on a show of deep affection. Don't you understand that belated affection is as worthless as grass? Just because Bella Green took George Smith out of the orphanage, treated him with all her heart, and asked for nothing in return. If he had any conscience at all, he wouldn't have done something like digging out Bella Green's kidney. Clearly, it was about coveting the Green family's assets. Clearly, it was about resenting the status of Bella Green as a wealthy heiress, wanting to have it both ways. "Bella," George Smith snapped back to reality and, seeing that I was about to leave, stopped me once again. I was wrong, I know, it's all my fault, but I just didn't understand my own heart." "Bella, I beg you, can you forgive me?" "No." I looked at George Smith, my words dripping with deep malice and hatred. "George Smith, you took my blood, you took my kidney, and you still want my forgiveness? Dream on, Bella. I was just deceived. I didn't mean to. I didn't know that Sarah Lincoln would lie to me. If I had known, I would never have hurt you for her." When it came to Sarah Lincoln, there was no longer any tenderness or affection in George Smith's eyes. In the original story, Sarah Lincoln's illness was fake. She didn't need a blood transfusion, nor did she need a kidney transplant. She did it on purpose. Sarah Lincoln couldn't stand to see Bella Green doing well, which is why she kept pretending to be weak and pitiful in front of George Smith, time and time again. What's laughable is that when Bella Green was alive, George Smith was blind and heartless, but after Bella Green died, it was as if he suddenly regained his sight. In the original book, he hated Sarah Lincoln for hurting me and deceiving him. The affection of childhood friends was gone, and he made Sarah Lincoln suffer terribly. But the one who hurt Bella Green was clearly you, George Smith. George Smith, wipe that disgusting look off your face. What do you mean you were deceived? That's just your excuse. The one who truly hurt me wasn't Sarah Lincoln. It was you. If you have any shame left, get out of my sight. After all, the sight of you makes me sick. George Smith's face turned pale, and seeing that I was about to leave, he knelt directly before me. "Bella, I know, all the mistakes are mine. I failed to see people clearly. I listened to one-sided words, but my feelings for you are real. Bella, I truly love you. I beg you, for the sake of how much I love you, please forgive me, Bella. As long as you're willing to forgive me, I'll do anything you ask." I raised an eyebrow, my gaze fixed on George Smith. TSK, watching the male lead in the book kneel at my feet like a dog, begging me like this. I have to say, it feels pretty damn good. You said you'd do anything as long as I forgive you. Yes. George Smith's eyes suddenly widened as if he had found a glimmer of hope, nodding incessantly. Bella, as long as you say the word, I'm willing to do anything. All right, as long as you have 1000 cc of blood drawn, just like I did, and then have a kidney removed, then I'll consider forgiving you. Bella, George Smith was stunned. What? Can't bear to part with it. My tone shifted. If you can't bear it, then get lost. If you dare show your face in front of me again, I won't mind telling my father and letting him deal with you. It's just making him go through what Bella Green once endured all over again. I haven't even treated him the way he treated Bella Green, with cold words, constant blows, and all sorts of psychological manipulation. I ignored George Smith and walked right past him, leaving without another word. Behind him, George Smith knelt there, like a statue. Bella, are you okay? Although Mia Green let me and George Smith be alone together, she kept an eye on us the whole time. Seeing me leave, she glanced at George Smith behind her, her gaze filled with dislike and wariness. Nothing, let's go, Bella, next time you don't want to see him, I'll just send him away. It's fine. Occasionally listening to a dog bark can be quite amusing. From a bit of a distance, Mia Green couldn't hear the conversation between me and George Smith, but hearing me compare George Smith's speech to a dog's bark, she immediately relaxed. If Bella likes dog barks, we can just raise a few next time. As for this kind of dog, I'm afraid it would dirty Bella's eyes. Mia Green's words were even more biting, but I liked it. All right, next time we'll raise a few dogs just to amuse me. After all, dogs like this are good for nothing except barking. We didn't deliberately lower our voices, and George Smith behind us clearly heard. At the corner, I saw his body sway slightly. Can't handle it already. Sometimes I really hate that I came from a civilized society. Otherwise, just kidnap George Smith and sell him to M. North. Cut out a kidney, dig out a liver, but it's fine as it is now. He has regained the memories of the male lead from before. Watching everything he once had slip away from him, it really is quite satisfying. I didn't pay attention to George Smith. I know someone like him would absolutely never draw his own blood or dig out his own kidney. A selfish and self-centered male lead. How could he possibly harm himself? But I never expected that George Smith would be even more insane than I had imagined. When I woke up in an unfamiliar environment, with my hands and feet bound and my mouth sealed with tape, it made me realize that I had been kidnapped. This discovery left me utterly shocked. I had a client meeting today. When I arrived, the secretary asked me to wait and then brought me a cup of tea. After drinking that tea, I lost consciousness. Seeing that I had woken up, George Smith walked over to me and reached out to touch my face. I turned my head away, but he cupped my face with both hands, stubbornly forcing me to meet his gaze. Bella, I've thought it over. The reason we ended up like this is all because of that bitch, Sarah Lincoln, me. In our past life, it was because of her that we were plagued by misunderstandings, even separated by life and death. I've brought that bitch here now. How about you take your revenge personally? Only then did I notice that on the ground not far away, Sarah Lincoln was tied up just like me, with her hands and feet bound and her mouth gagged. At this moment, her face was filled with terror as she looked fearfully at George Smith. Bella, George Smith gazed at me with infatuation, but the words he spoke were utterly cold. I've brought her before you. You can dig out her kidney with your own hands to avenge yourself. How about that? No, why didn't anyone tell me the male lead is a madman? In her previous life, Sarah Lincoln played the green tea role in various ways, framing Bella Green, but all because she had George Smith backing her up. In this life, I didn't plan to take action against Sarah Lincoln. She lived an ordinary life in the orphanage and eventually got into a local vocational college. Her fate had already diverged from her previous life. Mia Green had mentioned that she already had a boyfriend she was dating, and if nothing unexpected happened, they were planning to get married. Unexpectedly, she was kidnapped by that madman, George Smith. George Smith looked at me, his eyes distant, as if lost in some beautiful fantasy. Bella, as long as Sarah Lincoln dies, I believe we can be like before. Seeing that I wasn't speaking, George Smith seemed to finally snap out of it. He tore the tape off my mouth, his expression even more frenzied than before. Bella, come on, do it. He turned around and picked up a knife from the floor. As long as Sarah Lincoln dies, I believe we can go back to how we were before. I looked at George Smith as if he were a piece of trash. George Smith, are you insane? I could speak now, but my hands and feet were still tied. Yet, I had no intention of being polite to a scoundrel like George Smith. It was clearly you who wanted to take my kidney, so what are you pretending now? Bella, did I say something wrong? George Smith, if anyone's kidney should be taken, it should be yours. If anyone's blood should be drawn, it should be yours. What does Sarah Lincoln have to do with this? In the original story, Sarah Lincoln did indeed use cunning, but wasn't it George Smith who carried out those disgusting deeds? George Smith froze, and I sneered, not bothering to hide my contempt for him. What? You dare to do it but not own up to it, Bella. You what? You think you're not just a scumbag who shirks responsibility, but also a coward who fears death. George Smith was speechless. At his core, he was a selfish and self-serving person, not to mention that Sarah Lincoln in this lifetime had never harmed me, even in the previous life. The one who took action was George Smith. George Smith, you are nothing but a hypocritical, selfish, irresponsible, and ungrateful ingrate. I cursed him harshly, and George Smith's eyes turned red. He raised the knife in his hand, and I watched his movement, lifting my chin slightly. My contemptuous gaze greatly provoked George Smith. He raised his hand and let out a sharp cry. I quietly stepped back a little, only to see George Smith suddenly turn around and charge straight toward Sarah Lincoln. Bitch, it's all your fault. It's all because of you. In Sarah Lincoln's terrified gaze, George Smith plunged a knife into her abdomen. George Smith wasn't satisfied with just one stab. He pulled the knife out and plunged it in again. Bitch, you set me up. You set me up. I've been so good to you. I gave you money, bought you jewelry, bought you a villa, I supported you, and you actually deceived me. You want a kidney, huh, bitch? Are you worthy? Are you worthy? Give Bella's kidney back to her. Give it back to her. 11. George Smith didn't care about anything. Stabbing the front and then the back, Sarah Lincoln's mouth was gagged. She couldn't speak at all, her features contorted in pain, yet she was no match for George Smith's strength. I watched as Sarah Lincoln writhed on the ground, causing George Smith's strike to go astray. She was in even more pain, blood pooling on the ground. George Smith seemed to have gone mad. He pressed down on Sarah Lincoln's body, and after stabbing her in the lower back, he immediately slashed open the wound. Is it really true that they're going to remove Sarah Lincoln's kidney? A chill ran through me, and I averted my gaze. George Smith's skills were lacking. He made several cuts on Sarah Lincoln, yet not a single one allowed him to successfully remove the kidney. Sarah Lincoln had already fainted from the pain, but George Smith still felt it wasn't enough. He cut the wound on Sarah Lincoln's lower back even deeper, determined to remove her kidney. I had already stopped looking at him, but at that moment, he turned around and looked at me with an excited expression. Look, Bella, I've taken out this bitch's kidney. I've avenged you for you. Can you forgive me? I looked at George Smith, and at the kidney in his hand. George Smith, you're insane. George Smith froze, as if he had only just realized what he had done. He turned around and saw Sarah Lincoln, who had already lost consciousness, and the blood that had spilled all over the floor. The kidney in his hand thudded to the ground, and he took 2 steps back, his knees hitting the edge of the bed. He suddenly turned to look at me. Bella, look, I've avenged you. Can you forgive me now? George Smith, you truly disgust me. I don't want to say a single word to this kind of person. George Smith's defenses crumbled. He let out a shriek and suddenly pointed the knife in his hand at me. It's you. It's all because of you. Why don't you adopt me, love me, and give the Green family to me, just like you did in your past life? I've already said I love you. Why can't you forgive me, just because I made that one little mistake? I don't want to speak. With this kind of person, even one more word is a waste. You look down on me, don't you? What right do you have to look down on me? It was because of me that the Green family prospered. It was me, because of me. George Smith's expression began to turn frenzied as he stared at the blood on his hands, then glanced at me. Bella, there's still a way. Everything can still be fixed. He swallowed hard, as if he had finally thought of something. Let's do it again. This time, we'll start over. I'll go with you to the Green family. I promise. This time I'll treat you with all my heart. Bella, don't worry, I'll make it quick. It won't hurt. After saying that, George Smith raised the knife in his hand and was about to stab me. Before his knife could touch me, I lifted my foot and kicked straight at his chest. For this kick, I used all my strength. George Smith fell backward. I flexed my wrist and got out of bed. The small blade in the custom bracelet still needed breaking in. It took so long just to cut through a rope, otherwise, would have dealt with this bastard much sooner. You, George Smith was utterly shocked, his eyes wide as he stared at me. I sneered coldly. What, did you really think your little tricks could trap me? As the daughter of the wealthiest man, how could I not have a shred of vigilance? I had started to be on guard as soon as I realized that glass of water made me want to fall asleep. Going along with George Smith taking me away was just to catch him in the act. The sound of police sirens blared outside, and George Smith's face turned ashen. It's not like this, it shouldn't be like this, wrong, everything is wrong, he muttered to himself, his gaze falling on me, then suddenly sprang to his feet. It shouldn't be like this. As long as you die, we can start over. Bella, come with me one more time. He picked up a knife and charged toward me. I dodged and kicked again. This time, George Smith was directly kicked into the wall. His body fell heavily, and he struggled to get up, but the door had already been broken open by the police, with Mia Green and a few others following behind them. Bella, are you okay? I'm fine. I shook my head, my gaze falling on Sarah Lincoln lying on the ground. She's the one who's hurt. Has the ambulance arrived yet? The ambulance arrived, but it was already too late. Sarah Lincoln had long since stopped breathing. When George Smith heard the police announce the matter, he had already been restrained by the officers. He still refused to give up, his gaze fixed on me. Bella, look, I've avenged you. I truly have avenged you. Let's die together, and we'll start over. Madman, Mia Green blocked my line of sight. Bella, don't look. Looking at the concerned expressions on Mia Green and the others' faces, I suddenly laughed. Don't worry, I'm fine. I'm not Bella Green, who would be heartbroken to the point of life and death over a man. Moreover, George Smith brought this upon himself. If he had behaved properly, with his abilities and education, he could have lived a decent life. It's just that he once had it all and couldn't accept the gap of losing everything. But all of this was never his to begin with. Even though I was already safe, David Green was still terrified when he found out I had been kidnapped. He deliberately put aside his work and stayed home with me for 2 days. Only after seeing that I was truly fine did he decide to return to work. However, before leaving, he still felt a bit uneasy. The result of his unease was that he actually wanted me to get married. Bella, you're not young anymore. How about Dad finding you a companion? I widened my eyes and stared at David Green. Dad, are you saying you're tired of me? No, how could I ever be tired of you? David Green quickly explained. I just hope there's someone by your side who truly cares for you and can protect you. Mia Green can protect me. I don't need anyone else. Besides, I can protect myself. David Green looked at my expression, hesitated for a moment, and then spoke. You're not one of those. What do they call it online? Lesbians. Are you, Dad? What are you thinking? My eyes widened. Me and Mia Green. My body trembled, looking as if I had been struck by lightning. David Green patted his chest, visibly showing a hint of relief on his face. What about Leo Green and the others? I see you get along well with them too. Given our family situation, we don't need to consider their background. Which one do you like? Tell me, Dad. Are you trying to make me mess around? What nonsense are you talking about? Leo Green and the others are no different from my own brothers in my eyes. We grew up together, and if I had any such thoughts, would I have waited until now? When I first arrived, I looked at Leo Green and the others from an adult's perspective. After spending more time together, I really did start to feel like siblings with Leo Green and the others. Romantic feelings? Absolutely not. Then what kind of person do you like? I waved my hand, ending the topic. Dad, I'm still young right now, and what I want most is to earn a good living and bring glory to the Green family. Well, as for what you mentioned, if I happen to meet someone suitable in the future, I wouldn't mind getting married, but if I don't, with technology being so advanced these days, it wouldn't be a big deal for me to just pick a man and have a child on my own. David Green opened his mouth, then closed it, opened it again, and finally waved his hand dismissively. Forget it, suit yourself, Dad. Honestly, if you're willing, I wouldn't mind if you remarried. David Green took good care of himself and wasn't that old. If he really wanted to, he could definitely still have children if he remarried. David Green had no choice but to drop the matter. Exactly. Since I finally got the chance to be the daughter of the richest man, why should I follow the ordinary path? George Smith was sentenced to life imprisonment and locked up in prison. I heard he was quite restless inside. He kept shouting that he wanted another chance, and he even tried to commit suicide in there, hoping to be reborn that way. However, his actions were stopped by the prison guards. George Smith, who failed to commit suicide, became increasingly deranged, shouting every day that he was the richest man. However, his words only earned him a severe beating from his fellow inmates. Later, George Smith stopped talking and begged the prison guards, saying he wanted to see me. Of course, I won't go to see him, he doesn't deserve it. Then one day, news of George Smith's death came from the prison. He took advantage of the guards' negligence and committed suicide with a toothbrush. I heard that just before his death, George Smith kept saying how wonderful it was. He finally had another chance to start over. In that case, I wish him all the best in achieving his wish. As for the rest of the plot, it no longer affects me. Especially after both George Smith and Sarah Lincoln passed away, I didn't take over my father's company. I'm still young and need more experience. Leo Green and the others each shone brightly in their respective fields, eventually achieving quite remarkable accomplishments. Mia Green has always been my assistant, and in return, I gave her 10% of the original shares in my company, along with an annual salary of $1 million. All of this is because Mia Green is worth it. I have been in and out of a few relationships since then, but none of those men ever reached the point where I wanted to marry them. As for Leo Green and the others, they all entered into marriage after meeting the right people. They moved out of the Green family home early on, once their careers had achieved some success. Later, as they established their own families and careers, they would bring their partners and children to the Green family home to celebrate during the holidays, and that was often the liveliest time for the Green family. I watch David Green's longing gaze every time he sees the children of Leo Green and the others, and I don't feel conflicted. At the age of 30, I went to a sperm bank and selected 2 of the highest quality sperm, successfully giving birth to a son and a daughter. David Green was overjoyed because of these 2 children, looking several years younger. Not only did he not pressure me to get married, but he even announced, after hosting a grand banquet, that he would officially hand over the company to me, and he began his retirement life, enjoying the pleasures of doting on his grandchildren. His once fated early death had been completely rewritten. I believe that if the original Bella Green were here, she would probably be satisfied too. Whether she's satisfied or not, for one, am quite content. I sat in the office, watching the bright sunshine outside the window, just like my entire life. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.